When I was first born, my mother, she'd already had a very desperately difficult life, had a lot of mental health issues, put me literally from birth, pretty much put me into a cardboard box, and she left me on the street in London and walked away. And that was my introduction to life. Fostered by a Baptist church minister and his family at the time. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful parents. Called my parents Mop and Pop. And I went off to boarding school full of excitement, anticipation, which got crushed very, very quickly. The seniors from this one house, G House, and they would say to me, they'd corner me and they'd punch and kick me and they'd say, whatever happens, nigger, right? We don't want you in our house, right? You're not welcome in our house. So you can pick any house you want in the school, but you're not gonna come into our house, because if you come into our house, then we will cut you, we will burn you, and we will make your life hell. So do not come into G House. And sure enough, that's where I ended up. And it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. They put blocks of soap into an empty pillowcase and they would just club me. So I'd be asleep, I'd wake up to being clubbed, then I'd be clubbed unconscious. And this would happen night after night after night. And I couldn't escape because I had to come back to the dormitory. I spent all my time, my free time, hiding. Once a nigger, always a nigger. The only good nigger is a dead nigger. That's how they would chant at me all the time. They'd throw acid over my shoulders. They tied me to a tree, put cigarettes out the back of my head, broke 3 ribs. The teachers, there was no point going to the very people supposed to be looking after me because they didn't believe me, and then they were abusing me anyway, themselves. It got too much. It really got too much. And I lost it. I completely, totally lost it. It was like all those years just being beaten and bruised and broken and just not listened to, not heard, not believed in, not trusted. I said, okay, I'm not running anymore, so come out. And sure enough, they came out and it was a bloodbath. It was an absolute bloodbath. I was out of control. I was savage and I was vicious. I mean, vicious and violent. You can't live containing all of that brokenness, that pain, that anger, that rage, that confusion, that desperation, that loneliness. I'm not accepting this anymore. And I packed up a bag, I took a baseball bat, and I intentionally, methodically went up to the main building of the school, and I just smashed up the school with a baseball bat, had a rucksack, and I just went on the run. I ran away from home, I ran away from school, and I ran away from the police. And I would just immerse myself in this false pseudo world of drink and drugs, basically to try and deal with the gaping hole and brokenness, anger and rage and confusion in my life. And of course, you could only last for so long like that. I was lying on this rubbish dump and I looked back at my life and I said, I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to be put into a cardboard box. I didn't ask to be rejected in a children's home. I didn't ask to be cut, burnt, abused in boarding school. And I don't want this life. In fact, I don't want life at all. And in that moment, I decided to commit suicide. I decided I'd had enough. I was just going to take a massive drugs overdose, kill myself, end of pain, end of brokenness, end of hurt, end of life. Really simple. I hitched and connected with my drug dealer and I said to him, look, this is what I want. And he looked at me and he frowned and he just said, that's a lot of stuff. You need to come back in 3 days and I'll have it for you. And I said, all right, okay. And they're going to be my last 3 days of life. And I heard this voice in the back of my head. It was Pop, my foster dad, saying, son, however bad things get, the back door's always open. I didn't believe him. I was like, okay, well, we'll see. We'll see. So I get that 3 a.m. and I try the back door. It was open. It was open. But my eldest brother was there. He wasn't supposed to be home. It's a long story, and he said to me, I want to talk to you about Jesus. I was like, what? I'm not prepared to sit back and watch you ruin your parents' life, ruin your family's life, and ruin your own life. Because see, I knew about God because my foster father was a Baptist minister. I knew about God. I just didn't know God, who he really was. Maybe there was a God, but if there was a God, then why was all this happening in my life? Why had all this happened in my life? I remember going, all right, God, it's like if you're a real God, then come on, change me. Bring it on, change me. I didn't expect anything to happen, but it did. It really did. I just started to shake. My whole body started to shake, and I wept and wept and wept. I was convulsing and shaking. All those years, damned and blocked, just being released. And then there was this calm and this peace and this lightness, this amazing lightness. And I didn't understand it. I did not understand it at all. I need this change that's happening in me to be permanent, and I need to do something myself intentionally because I owe this to my family. I owe this to Mop and Pop, particularly. Coming in after this amazing experience with God, coming into the kitchen. I said, Mop, and I remember she didn't turn around at that time. Her shoulders came up and she just started to shake, and I knew she was crying. And eventually she turned around and I just said, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And she was crying and I was crying. And she was crying and I was crying, and we were just crying and crying, and I didn't know what to do, so I just had to leave again, try and process all that was happening. Like I say, 2 years of not feeling emotionally, physically, spiritually, just the dam breaking and all of that stuff. It was overwhelming. Totally overwhelming. You've turned me around, shown me the way. And step by step by step, he was able to do that. Because I've met this Jesus who was dynamic, who was explosive, who was changing lives, changing my life, giving me a purpose and reason for living. And that I knew was just the beginning, but how do I get from that beginning and move forward with it? Which is why I decided to connect with a local church, to try and find a lifeline, to get some kind of sense, some baby steps, if you will, on how to move forward in the fullness of who and what God had called me to do and be. And still an angry young man. But I was now on the path to freedom with church giving me a foundation, and perhaps more importantly, fully strong, authentic, genuine believers who had their own lives changed, speaking into my life. And that made all the difference. I was back on the street, but this time out of choice. I was meeting particularly young people on the street whose lives were broken and bust up like mine. So how can I give my story to these guys and encourage them into freedom and light and life when I can't read, write, and speak properly? So what I did was I taught myself mime, and started off with my own little techniques and taught myself to do the mime. And this way I could share my story through mime and movement, and sort of fragmented words as best I could. Started doing a lot of research, a lot of studying, and developed to the point of getting my BA in theatre arts and my MA in devising, directing in physical theatre. And then since then, I've had the privilege and the honour to work in over 40 different countries worldwide, working in every area from prison rehabilitation centres, back on the street, that kind of space and place right to working West End, Broadway, top universities, performing arts schools. I mean, anywhere I can go that will help people to realize their full potential, who Papa God has called them, called me, called us to be. If that is what's available, if that's what the calling is, if that's what the offer is, if that's what the request is from my God, then my answer is really simple. Here I am, send me. I testify to the goodness of what God has done in my life. Hallelujah.
If there is anything that has resonated with you in this video, we believe that Jesus can make all the difference. Don't hesitate to respond. We would love to chat with you.